Okay, in 66, the first place that hippie leather gear was made and sold was... anyway, I won't go into that. It was called a sandal shop and evolved into a part-time dwelling place where entrepreneurial hippies would create stuff. Never having been a creative type, I can't describe it, but I was invited to join, but I refused because I looked in the window one day and I saw big, strong hippies sweating with long, big hair and giant muscles banging away with hammers, making hippie stuff, and it sort of scared me a bit. It was so fucking butch. There were no women in sight. So it was called the Peg and Awl, AWL. It was on Oxford Street near the Mandala Theatre block, and later it was named Frank's Cafe and moved to Chalice Avenue, I think. Anyway, I didn't want to go there. I wasn't on the dole because I was too busy to front up to the employment office. I got food from soup kitchens or the Royal George, and when I'd visit someone, it was considered okay to raid the fridge. Life became a round of dropping in to visit people that had a room to live in. But you never knew what was around the corner. That was the good bit about it. A party or casual work or hitching to Melbourne or conning $10 out of a tourist. And that was the excitement of the joint. My pal Dutch Andy, the Mad Dutchman, he stole milk from outside shops before they opened. And many of my, what was called the love generation, well, we weren't love generation. We were fucking psychopath hippies generation. It was an us versus them mentality. The morning's pickings at the hippie pub, the Royal George, was poor. For the third time, Johnny Bates was an ex-boxer type. His face was all punched in and broken nose, and he was a good friend of mine, but he was a hopeless alcoholic. Most of my friends were deep alcoholics, but they had character. And I thought, geez, I'm hungry. And I got the idea that if I collapsed on the street outside and pretended I was sick, an ambulance would come and I'd be driven to Sydney Hospital, and in half an hour I'd be eating a nice hospital meal. So I got someone to call the ambulance and say that I was collapsed outside, and I started breathing in a shallow manner because that's what sick people do. And I thought they'd take me unchecked straight to a ward, give me pyjamas, tuck me in and feed me. But no, the ambulance, my gasping, didn't fool them one bit, and I was thrown out. So I walked back to the pub hoping that someone rich had arrived. Dutch Andy said, "Oh, everybody's gone up to Newcastle Jazz Festival. Let's go up there and bum some drinks and dig some jazz." So we began hitching on George Street, and we got a lift to St Leonard's, and no one would stop and pick us up. So we hopped on a train to Tuggerah, where there was no ticket collector. Then we walked along that's where I live now, near there, funnily enough, 100 years later. So walking along the Pacific Highway thumbing did no good. And by the time we got to Wyong, we saw a sign that said Wyong River Recreation Reserve. So I said, let's sit in the sun and recreate. And we lay watching the river flow and singing that Bob Dylan song. Now, I don't know if we did sing it because it may not have been written yet, watching the river flow. Anyway, it's poetic imagery. Two kids came along in two canoes, and they pulled up on the bank and disappeared up the road, carrying their paddles. So me and Dutch looked at each other, and we went and got a couple of big sticks from some garbage nearby and jumped in the canoes and took off with the current. Now, if we were not psychopathic hippies, we would not have stolen those kids' canoes. But the canoes belonged to a place nearby, which was a tourist resort, which was a lovely place. I can't remember the name now. But it's still at Wyong. Anyone that lives at Wyong would know it because it's got a mini golf course out the front that is now covered in weeds. And it's a real cheap place to live now for people that got no money. But back then it was a classy holiday resort, so we didn't feel guilty taking the canoe. So the river was beautiful, Wyong River. The sun was out and the breeze fanned us, and the birds made noises like bells, ding, ding, and big white pelicans watched us go by. So we sang to them. Dutch Andy loved to sing, "No milk today, my love has gone away. It wasn't always so, return 19 today. No milk today." And he loved to sing, "We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do, we gotta get out of this place. Girl, there's a better land for me and you." Boom, boom. Until the river spread out into a lake. And Dutch said, "We have discovered the great inland sea that Burke and Wills was looking for. We are pioneers." And I called out, "I'm the great explorer, Captain Sturt." No, I am Captain West Torrens," because that was my favourite football team in Adelaide. And Dutch grew ahead with his canoe and he yelled, "I am the great Dutch navigator, Van Diemen the Schemen, and I claim this lake on behalf of the dirty, unwashed hippies, and hereby return it to the dirty, unwashed Aboriginals." And then we saw a police car go by, so we paddled ashore and we left the canoes on the river bank at the entrance and headed back to the George. One night at closing time at the hippie pub, the Royal George, a long-haired unemployed nurse called Frank was walking behind me as I began the nightly walk to the King's Cross. The day before I'd showed him Kent Street Soup Kitchen, so I think he felt he owed me. Now, some nights there was no party to attend and no floor to sleep on. So sometimes I used to camp in the tennis shed at Rushcutter Bay. It was summer and I liked the shed. I'd lived there back when I knew no one in Sydney. But I was walking up to the cross and Frank caught up with me and he said, "I know a great place to sleep in Darling Point." Oh, he talked pretty posh, he did. "I stayed there last night and it's magic old mansion that no one is living in. Do you want to sleep there tonight?" I said, "If you lend me a blanket," because I knew he was carrying one inside his sleeping bag. He was new in town, so he was still carrying his sleeping bag. And the kid had a sissy-type face, but his attempt to be a beatnik should be encouraged. And the idea of us inside a society mansion appealed to my Marx Brothers freeloader style, so I rushed him through the alleyways because carrying a sleeping bag would cause cops to zero in like rats to a dead body. So we hustled through the night like Olympic marathon walkers. I took off my denim jacket and tied it round my waist to cool down, and then we arrived at a Darling Point mansion called Boomerang. And Frank showed me the decorative opening in the wall. It was a little hole. The mansion was surrounded by a 6-foot-high wall, but there were little decorative holes in it. And he showed me through the hole. He said, "See the garden? Isn't it great?" He was like a tail-wagging puppy. I was not impressed, but to make him joyous, I agreed it was. Now, we didn't know that the Art Deco mansion was known to the locals as Boomerang. and it contained antique art. It was hot as hell for anyone daring to enter, and we mugs had no idea. My instincts told me to piss off. But we clambered over the wall and down the other side into a lacerating rose bush, and we crept through spider webs for 5 minutes. And then he said, "Oh, it might be uncool to enter the house." And I said, no, we're not going to enter the house. We're just going to camp on the veranda. Silence lived here. Our gently placed footsteps on the gravel sounded loud. So we spread his sleeping gear on the front porch and we lay our tiredness down and we slept. Butch voices boomed from 2 sides, flashlights swept and boots crunched, and we sprang up and run. And Johnny Horton's Battle of New Orleans rattled in my mind. They ran through the briars, they ran through the brambles, they ran through the bushes where a rabbit couldn't go. A man yelled, "There they are, get 'em!" I ran, hoping a miracle would hide me. But a voice hollered, "They're running to the dock, cut 'em off." We hid under a rowboat, but an upturned rowboat, and we found and we were handcuffed and loaded in a car and taken to Darlinghurst Police Station. They took mug shots and fingerprints and put us in a large cell with wooden slats on the floor. Next morning, we were told we'd appear in Liverpool Street Court. Drunks came and went doing their 4 hours jail, but I was too tired to care, except when cell doors clanged and I woke from the void to the ranting of the inebriated. Sometimes the rummies sang. It was always a song of the 40s and never any rock songs. Every 5th drunk yelled abuse at fate or cops. Around 4 a.m. it got quiet and I tried to nap, but it was so cold I lay shivering in my blanket. A warden points out of 10 to everybody's snores. We were charged with unlawful trespass, and the cops promised if we pleaded guilty, we'd walk out with a fine, and we were stupid enough to trust them. It was Frank's first offence, and when he was given a month in jail, my heart sank. The prosecutor told the judge my past record: 2 vagrancy, 1 larceny, and 1 housebreaking as a juvenile, and 1 desecration of the Australian flag was even on my bloody record, because when I was a 16-year-old, I'd stolen a flag from the town hall. And I glanced around the court and people were looking at me as if I was Adolf Hitler. My stomach sank down all the way to my socks. The judge sentenced me to 6 months. Hang on, my bloody pointer's gone missing. Fucking hell, what's wrong with this bloody computer? Where's me bloody thing? Bloody hell. Come on, I'll run out of battery in a minute. Where's me bloody fucking hell? Where's everything? I'll fix you, mate. No computer's going to stop me doing stuff, all right? Yeah, where were we? Yeah. An infuriating sense of injustice shook me. I felt like screaming, "How could you do this to anyone?" But then my beatitude philosophy awoke and refused to let the situation get me down. And that's something I think I've had for a long time. And that's a blessing. And I thought to myself, well, one day if someone writes a book about me, that judge will sure be sorry what he did. At least I'll get out after 4 months with good behaviour. I would exist in the now, and I will not let the state squash my spirit. Back in the cell, I squared my skinny shoulders and hitched up my jeans, and I walked up and down with my thumbs sticking in my belt, just like all the other tough guys I'd seen walking up and down in other jails. But every night, hatred for stinking square society ground like glass in the stomach mixer of my stomach, in the sausage mixer of my stomach. Yeah. At 4 p.m, the Black Mariah pulls into the alley behind Darlinghurst Court and takes everyone to Long Bay Jail. And I've already done a video about this bit of jail, so I'll put that up after. Okay, that's all for now. Bloody hell, it's time for me to have a shower, I think. Oh, fuck. All right. I'm only doing this for bloody, what's his name? Kent Kruger. Kent, I don't think Kent likes hippie stories because he's a loner. Well, I'm a fucking loner too. I only joined the hippies to get girls. And so far, I hadn't done very good. But after I get out of jail this time, I'll have a bit more luck. Okay? So, dreams can come true.